Hey you guys, welcome to my very first horizontal YouTube video! So I recently received this comment, and after starting to make a video in vertical form, I realized it was getting longer and longer. So join me today as I give you a deep analysis of young Maria versus Maria Callas's final performance, and kind of all the differences that we hear as professional opera singers versus the very minute differences that you might not be able to hear if you're not trained professionally in this. Disclaimer, this analysis is not saying that Maria Callas is not an incredible artist. She absolutely is. This is just a very niche deep dive analysis for those that are interested to learn more. The piece that we're going to be analyzing today is called O mio babbino caro. It's a very famous opera piece. You've probably already heard it, honestly. I'm going to be taking a recording of hers from the 60s versus her final performance in Tokyo in 1974. And we're gonna kind of go line by line to analyze the differences in her voice. The reason that we're doing this is because a lot of people say that Maria Callas lost her voice towards the end of her life. They say that she died of a broken heart, but I wonder if her broken heart was because she knew she couldn't recuperate her voice to the glory that it once was. This is not saying that she didn't sound good. She still sounded amazing towards the end of her life. It's just that she sounded otherworldly before. It's kind of the same thing as when a professional football player retires. He's never going to be at that same athletic peak. And for whatever reason, Maria was not. She was really struggling with recuperating her former glory and her former voice at the end of the day. So let's get into it. The first thing to note here is that young Maria, her voice just sounds more plummy. It has more colors, it has more textures, there's more meat on the bone, there's more fat on the bone. In the video from her last performance, it seems that you've stripped away that muscle and it's just the bone remaining, which creates a very white sound. It doesn't have the same depth. When you don't have those colors and those textures in the voice, what happens is the voice becomes a bit strident. It just gets this edge to it that's very aggressive and just not as pleasant to the ear. Another way to describe it is it becomes more white rather than multicolored like she had when she was younger. Another thing that happens for somebody listening who is a professional in this is that her middle voice is really struggling. In opera, we know that the health of someone's voice often lays in their middle voice. If they have a good middle, they're probably going to have good low notes and they're probably going to have good high notes. When your voice starts to deteriorate though, the first thing to go is the middle voice. It's the indicator of, is this voice healthy or not? And in her young clip, her middle voice was really nice and really even. And in the older clip, it just gets a bit unstable. Because her middle voice is just not strong anymore, what she does is she kind of digs into the low and really overcompensates the low and chests the low. To kind of prove a point that like, no, my voice is still here. Okay, I just messed up my middle, but then listen to my low note. This is a classic move from opera singers who are struggling with either their high or low. The part that we kind of mess up on, right after, we go really hard to prove that like, no, we're still here, we can do this. The reason also that this is so obvious that she's doing it in the older clip is because she doesn't do it in the young clip. In this next clip, Vo andare in porta rossa, vo andare in porta rossa. The vocal effect that she's going for in her young clip, which is to sound like a young girl, because this aria is about a young girl asking her dad to be able to get married. Maria Callas puts that vocal effect into her voice. And in the 1960s clip, it's very obvious that she's doing that and she executes it very well. When she tries to do this in the Tokyo clip, what kind of happens is her voice fails her. She's not able to maintain the same effect. The other thing that's happening a lot with Maria, which is very weird, is that she seems to be running out of breath a lot. The reason that this is weird is because in her earlier career, she sang very long and very heavy and very difficult opera roles. And O mio babbino caro is kind of what we would call, it's not necessarily a beginner aria, but it's definitely way easier than a lot of other operas that she sang. So it's very like almost painful to hear her running out of breath on what would be considered an easier aria. It really tells the listener that like, oh, we've gone backwards here. Basically on easier repertoire, she's struggling. This is kind of why we're encouraged as opera singers not to sing repertoire that's too heavy for us, because if we sing too heavy, which maybe you might argue that Maria sang repertoire that was too heavy, everyone's gonna have a different opinion on that. If you sing rep that's too heavy, it shortens your career and you're not able to maintain that freshness in your voice. You can't sing for your whole life. Your voice starts to malfunction and it stops responding to you in the same way. It also doesn't sound the same to the listener. You can't produce it the same. Yeah, it's just kind of a recipe for disaster. It does make me emotional listening to her final performance because I just know how good she used to be. But that being said, it still doesn't sound bad. When I was a young opera singer and started just learning about opera, Maria Callas was like my go-to soprano to listen to. And I love the clips from her final performances. The emotion she was able to put in the piece still got through to me. So when I was younger, I also couldn't hear these like vocal defects, we might call them. And that's really just a testament to how grand of an artist she was. Like, she put her whole soul and all of her emotions into this music. So even when her voice was not functioning in the same high way that it used to, she was still able to create art and be an artist. Be artistic in her music. This next clip where she goes, "Ma per buttarmi in arno, ma per buttarmi in arno, ma per buttarmi in arno." What is the whitest sound in this clip is her ah vowel. Maria Callas had an amazing ah vowel, and for whatever reason, her ah in her middle voice right now is just not responding to her. It's becoming very, very thin, where you can think of it as like a line on a piece of paper. Like, it used to be thick, colorful, there was a center to the line, but then there's a top and the bottom. And in her older clip, it just becomes like a ah. That's an exaggeration, but it used to be something that was like ah, and now it's like ah. And she's trying to hang on, she's still approaching it in the same way, but for whatever reason, her voice just sounds deteriorated. It sounds like it's not there anymore. Basically, like I mentioned before, in her final performance, she's just not singing well anymore in the middle voice, and the middle voice tells us everything we need to know about the voice. The crazy thing is, though, in her older clip, in the final performance, she still has crazy good high notes. They do get like a little crazy, they do get a little strident, but at the end of the day, they're still there, they're still functioning. They still seem to have overtones. Another thing that happens with vocal degeneration is you'll maybe lose a part of your range, but then there's parts of it that will remain. So these high notes are not so high, they still seem to be working for her. I think O mio babbino caro goes up to an A flat. If she was to sing higher, so like B or C or D, probably she doesn't have those notes anymore, which is why she's not singing super high rep for this concert. And when I say rep, I mean like opera repertoire, which is kind of just our slang for all of the songs in the opera universe. In this next clip, Babbo Pietà, clip she has full control over her voice, but in the older clip we don't feel like she has control over her instrument anymore. The thing that tells us that is that when she goes up high in the Tokyo clip, she kind of has to sing it very loud. She no longer has control over the dynamics. This part of the aria is supposed to be sung quietly, and in the younger clip she's able to accomplish that, but in the older clip she has to kind of belt it out, which is just another testament to the fact that she's losing control. She has to sing it loud. She can't really control the voice anymore and sing it quieter. And the other thing that tells me that it's harder for her to sing that high note is that her release of the high note is kind of belabored. It's kind of like a ah, rather than a gentle release. It feels like it was hard for her to release that note, even though that note was not even that high. Finally, in the final phrase, she's not able to carry the phrase all the way to the end. Very weird for Maria. Her voice kind of just pitters out at the end. This is the kind of work I did in school and I still do with voice teachers on voice and vocal health, and it's something that I think everybody should know about. It is not meant to be an insult, it is not meant to be holier than thou. This is the type of thing that all opera singers do when they're learning about the voice and when they're learning about singing, and the more you learn about singing, the more you hear these little minutiae. And yeah, if you listen to this the same way that I'm listening to it, you can kind of improve your listening skills and notice these little details the next time you hear a regular singer singing or an opera singer.